I visited Turtle WoW about a year ago, just to have a look at what this little private server was doing, and it was doing rather well for itself. I gave it 3 thumbs up at the time, but it has been a year, and many things have changed, so let's see if it's still going strong. So the first thing to get out of the way is what Turtle WoW actually is. It is what Blizzard won't do, essentially. It is Classic Continued, it is Classic Plus, whatever you want to call it. It's taking the original vanilla client and expanding upon it, in many, many ways. I mean, there are, I think at last check I saw at least 1,100 new quests, there are new dungeons, there are new items, profession recipes, class and race combinations. You can be a gnome hunter here, for example. There are even new races, goblin and high elf. There are new zones, secondary professions, and more to come. In fact, I think a human hunter and troll warlock are becoming available next patch. Along with Gilneas actually being opened up and playable. And there's the always mentioned Scarlet Crusade raid that isn't quite with us yet. It certainly is a spectacular amount of additional content, and if a bunch of vanilla enthusiasts can do it, then Blizzard certainly can. Population-wise, last time I was here it was around about 750 at peak times. Now it's 1,500 off-peak times, so it's double that, and it's closer to 3,000 at peak times now, so it's definitely experienced some growth. I did a census of Turtle WoW this morning, using an add-on, of course, and it tells me what I pretty much already knew. There are far too many humans and high elves in the Alliance, and not enough gnomes. And that warriors and paladins pretty much lead the way. The hunters and mages also very popular, and that shaman are the people we really, really need. Although, you know, roll a lot because they're getting a lot of changes as well. Now, of course, in terms of community, when you get more players coming in, you will also get more trolls, bellends, you know, etc. coming in as well. But the turtle community does remain, you know, generally friendly and welcoming for the most part. The moderation that existed in the Newcomers Guild for the new starters, the Still Alive Guild for the hardcores, and the World Chat still exists. It is still moderated, so, you know, according to the terms of service, political, religious, controversial topics of that sort of kind are not permitted in any of those chat channels. They are permitted in guilds, etc. So, you know, it doesn't mean that you can't talk about what you like when you like on those particular channels. Just be aware that you do run the risk of being turtled by the GMs. Either in real time or later if someone's decided to report you. And, you know, chats do have a tendency to spiral from time to time if they're left alone. So, you know, sometimes it's very entertaining, and other times it's less so. Personally, I only report the egregious outliers, you know, racists, bigots, admirers of National Socialism of the 1930s and 1940s. Everyone else is pretty funny, really, in their own very, very different and very special ways. And remember, of course, that if chat is getting on your nerves, you can just turn it off for a bit, you know, just take some time out from it and enjoy a more immersive Azerothian experience without having some random's opinion on Andrew Tate or something else. Let's move on. Class changes. Now, the class changes were being postulated, I think, last time I was here, but they're actually in place now, so most have been positively received. You know, paladins, for example, they now have a taunt, which is useful for a tank. And I think they get mana back from blocking, something like that. Anyway, a lot of the problems with paladin tanks have been solved. They're very, very good dungeon tanks. They're supposed to be superb levelers. And there are a lot of paladins running around in all stripes at the moment. Holy Priest's got a 31-point talent that includes the ability to fear ward, so you're not forced into being a dwarf anymore. As for the dwarves, you now wield double fear ward. You are not afraid of anything. Warrior's got the ability to thunderclap in defensive stance, and it does up to 60% more damage if you talent into it properly. I have a low level Protty, and she is slapping that thunder down. Is really good. So yeah, I like that change. And you know, that's just a sample. There are a lot more going on as well. Some of the classes that were really struggling to be accepted to raids got some buffs as well, but I think this is a good time to point out that, you know, while they're more viable than they were before, they're not going to be topping the charts. You know, you're not going to be blasting everything away with a Ret Paladin or an Arcane Mage. And Boomkins, unfortunately, are still struggling quite badly. So, you know, the changes aren't perfect, but they are an improvement on the vanilla standard, and this is Turtle WoW, so they are subject to change again. The hardcore guys are still going strong, so many people running around with just one life to live. You still, I mean, I still wince anyway when I see a fallen hardcore. You know, you get an announcement in the server that says, you know, a tragedy has occurred. If it's a level 10, it's like, maybe hardcore isn't for you, but if, you know, if it's above level 30, it gets like, ouch. I saw 59 the other day. Apparently died in lava. That has to be hurting in so many different ways. I think we should mention PvP. It is a PvE RP server, so it's, you know, there's not going to be as big a PvP scene for that reason alone. So it's pretty quiet in some ways, and it's not so quiet in others. So Turtle WoW is cross-faction, so you're all sort of bunched together. You can mail the opposite faction, you can group with them, you can do dungeons, you can do raids, join guilds, the auction houses are linked together, it's everything. The only separation comes in World PvP and in Battlegrounds, and the one arena that Turtle WoW have added. So the Glyph of War is popular with levelers as it gives you 30% more XP across the board at the cost of being permanently flagged for player versus player activity. And as I've covered in a previous video, I feel that's pulling in two different, very divergent directions. But you know, many are prepared to take a chance of being stomped by the opposing faction as they level up quicker. And it is quick, it's stupidly quick. When I was last here, everyone would huddle under the tents at Gurubashi Arena in Stranglethorn Vale, which was quite close to a PvP arena, and there were usually a lot of corpses and skeletons scattered around the tenting area. Now the Alliance are herding at Goldshire, and the Horde at Crossroads, and both factions are replete with level 60s and absolutely maxed out twinks, who are getting their jollies from one-shotting the opposing faction's little levelers. I think it's safe to say that more salt is mined from ganking low levels than anything else on the chat channels, and it'll be the same old arguments that you've seen since 2004. My take has been the same as it has always been. If it's red, it's dead. If you elect to flag for PvP, you can't complain when it takes place. PvP, like any war, is inherently unfair. Anyway, in terms of Battlegrounds, I see them pop up regularly enough for the 10 to 19 bracket and 60-60, but much less so for the other brackets in between. There is at least one Twink Guild active on the server, and they do take their fair share of the war mode levelers. But overall, I'd say the PvP on Turtle WoW is pretty quiet in comparison to the other places I've visited. Obviously, because all the others I've visited are PvP servers. So where does this leave Turtle WoW overall? Well, in a fantastic place, really. I mean, it's pretty much quadrupled its population in the last year. And that's entirely deserved because it's a really, really good server, and you know, there is more content coming, as I've already mentioned. The player base is mostly helpful, and the ones who aren't helpful are usually quite funny. There is plenty of support available. I've managed to, you know, log a couple of bugs through GitHub, which have been subsequently fixed in a small patch. You know, stuff like that is really useful, and the moderation, if you don't agree with that, that's fine, but it does need to be there, I think. And I've only just scratched the surface. I haven't talked about, you know, dual spec being available either on the donation shop or for a huge wad of gold on actually in the game. That's entirely up to you how you do that. Or the fact that they've raised the debuff limit to 64 from 16. So that's opened up a lot more dot specs to the possibility of actually doing some decent damage. So if you're looking for a progressive vanilla server, then do pop by. Come along and give it a try. It is an awful lot of fun. You'll probably make a lot of new friends from all over the world because, you know, we've got guilds from Russia, we've got guilds from Spain, France, Germany, Mars. Okay, maybe not that last one, but, you know, we've got a lot of people from a lot of different places, and so that means there's always someone to talk to on Turtle WoW. I will leave it there for now. I will be back relatively soon, but until then, I'm the Conspicuous Moo, and a very, very good morning to you.